Welcome to the divisional round edition of the In the Huddle podcast. I'm Jason Canfora. I'm joined by Brian Baldinger. Our buddy Carl Dukes is a little under the weather. We hope he feels well soon, and we hope the Atlanta Falcons find a defensive coordinator for Carl soon. Baldy, we've got 4 games left. We are getting down to the nitty gritty. We will hit on all 4 games and give our sort of impressions of them, and how some of what we saw last week bodes for this week. I guess in terms of just league-wide, watching that weekend of football, the one thing that stood out to me was the big man sort of won. The team that was more equipped to run the football, the team that had the burlier offensive line. As much as we talk about this new era in the NFL and how much passing's been incentivized, and I'm by no means demeaning that, and I'm not saying that this is the only way to go, but it seemed to me that bully ball carried the day in the wild card round.
You're right. So, I mean, just think about this, and I know you have, Jason, especially being in Baltimore, but, you know, the Steelers played the Ravens 3 times in 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And they had no answer. None. Like, it was shocking. That 44-yard touchdown by Derrick Henry to kind of blow the game open.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's Minka, there's Deshaun Elliott, there's Patrick Queen, all waiting for Lamar to carry the ball. And there's nobody in the A-gap.
Yeah.
And, you know, they had this thing, okay, you run a read option to TJ Watt, TJ tackled the back all day long. All right, well, if you let either Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson get vertical, it's over. It's over. You got to be like, I remember Warren Sapp back in the day when Tampa would play Atlanta with Mike Vick. And their whole thing was, we got to flatten Vick to the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
If we let him go north, like nobody's going to catch him, and there's going to be big chunks he's going to gain. And they never flattened either Henry or Lamar. And that's a team that sees them in the cut-ups every day.
Oh, yeah.
No matter who they're preparing for, Cleveland, Cincinnati. They're seeing what Baltimore's doing. And then to play them 3 times in 8 weeks. And you go, okay, we'll give up, 250 yards rushing, whatever it was. I mean, it's so, but part of it says to me, this is how difficult it is to defend these 2 guys. And what Buffalo, we'll get to it, but what Buffalo's got to contend with, because they weren't good at it the first time they played at all week 4. And, what are they going to do differently this time?
Yeah, I mean, we saw Buffalo run all over a Denver team that couldn't run the ball.
Yeah.
We saw the Eagles be more committed and effective running the ball than Green Bay in a low-scoring game. And the Houston Texans, who struggled like hell, Baldy, to run the ball the final 5-6 weeks of the season, they got it going in the second half. They were able to get a lead, right? Come back from all the craziness of the first, 28 minutes of the first half. Score on that crazy drive where the ball, bad snap on Stroud, and then get Joe Mixon going in the second half, which I think would have to be a critical element for them at Arrowhead as we start with the first game of this weekend, right? Like, they've got to go to Arrowhead and run the ball better than they did a couple weeks ago there.
Well, yes, they played back in week 16, so 4 weeks ago. But I said on this podcast last week, Jason, that if Houston's going to win, now, look, it's good that you get 4 interceptions on Justin Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
Derek Stingley looks like he is, Deion Sanders out there. Like, that helps. But I said if Houston was going to win that game, it had to be a Joe Mixon game. And I think he got 26 carries.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to take 30, but, they really, got him going in the second half, like you said. And, he's a guy that is a high-volume carrier. He did not have a great season. He was injured a little bit. The line wasn't great, but it was good enough. They got the takeaways. So that was good. But, if you go back, even like rewatching that game from week 16, I mean, it's a 24-19 game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson, like they're doing their best. I thought Joe Tooney out there, a left tackle, really sort of cement. He had started the week before against Cleveland, but it's 5 weeks now of him at left tackle. They've really shored things up front. But it was really a couple, 3rd and 8 conversion to nuke to keep a drive going in the fourth quarter and not give the ball back. A 4th and 2 conversion, classic Mahomes just taking a hit in the pocket and finding Hollywood Brown for a first down. Like they had to extend themselves a little bit to beat him. It wasn't all right. 27-19, they had to control the game. That was the final. I thought Houston hung in there quite a bit, and that was at Arrowhead. And at that point, I think Kansas City was just coming out of their offensive struggles.
Yes.
They had gone through a long stretch where Mahomes basically had to say every week, we got to get better. We got to, it's on us. It's us, and they kind of figured things out. I thought that game kind of helped them a little bit.
Yeah, in that game, 39 passes to 17 runs for the Houston Texans. I don't know that Bobby Slowick wants to approach it quite that way.
Right.
Again, this time around. Baldy, this will be an extended extreme rest for most of the Kansas City Chiefs critical players, like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Will that show up? Will it show up in the first half? Is Andy Reid's obviously way better at this than you and I will ever be, and he made his calculations. But that's a long time.
It's a long time, Jason. And Andy had this issue in Philadelphia a couple of times. When they were going to NFC Championship games, and they had that decision to make once they clinched the division, and had things, and he's had it in Kansas City, and he always opts on the side of rest, and then it's up to him, the way that he practices, the way that he prepares, to try and make sure that there isn't that rust. So he's been through it before. Mahomes has been through it before. I can just imagine if Chris Jones, with 3 weeks of rest basically to get ready for this type of game where he lives for these big games, and it's not good matchups for him inside. They've gone to a real pass rush defensive line with Amenahu back healthy, and Dana and Karlaftis. They have been floated that line out there over the last few weeks where, Spags did not have to do some exotic blitzes to get home. They were able to do it with their four, but it's good to have that option if you want to play coverage and try to take certain guys away, whether it's Nico Collins, whatever it might be. So I think defensively, they'll definitely benefit by it. And offensively, we will wait to see how quickly it takes. Because in that last game, it's interesting. The week before, Mahomes injured his ankle, and there was question marks.
Right.
Whether he was going to be able to go, and would he go? And
he takes off and runs for a long touchdown.
The opening drive, he goes 15 yards right up the middle for a touchdown. You go, well, so much for that ankle injury. So they're going to be. They've got everybody. Hollywood, Xavier, Pacheco. They got the left tackle thing figured out. I mean, they've got all their positions filled right now. Just a question of, to your point, is there going to be any rust on how the offense clicks? And my gut feeling is it's not going to take much.
Speaking of Patrick Mahomes, because he hasn't played for a few weeks, and so, we live in a world of instant gratification and what have you done for me lately? The postseason begin for Patrick Mahomes Saturday afternoon. Baldy, Patrick Mahomes has played 18 career playoff games.
That's already one more. That's already one more than Peyton Manning had in his whole career.
So there's that. He's 15-3 in those games, Baldy, with 5,135 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, just 9 picks, and 524 rushing yards. In the history of professional football, Baldy, in the regular season, you could take any quarterback who's ever played, and you could run his best 18-game stretch in the regular season, and you will not find one who has 5,000 passing yards, at least 40 touchdowns, fewer than 10 interceptions, and at least 500 yards rushing in their best stretch of the regular season. And that's what this guy's done in his first 18 playoff games, bro.
It's mind-blowing, Jason. And one of those playoff games was against Houston when they were down. Were they down 24-0, Jason?
Yes.
They were down 24-0. And I'll never forget the soundbite caught live on camera and him going up to the offensive line and to the offensive guys going, we just got to get a touchdown. We just need a touchdown. Yeah. And then the touchdown became just an avalanche. And they didn't stop scoring touchdowns until they blew Houston out. But they spotted Houston, and I think they had a block punt. A lot of things went haywire for him. But they were down 24-0, and he didn't blink. There is no comps to Patrick Mahomes in the postseason.
There are not. There are not, and I just think we needed to have that as a public service announcement.
Yeah.
He has 31 passing touchdowns in 12 career playoff games at home. Yes, I like Patrick Mahomes to throw over 1.5 passing touchdowns in this game. Another public service announcement. Travis Kelce has 19 touchdowns in his last 19 playoff games, plus 170 on a Travis Kelce anytime touchdown. And Baldy, this spread is interesting to me. There's a few things interesting to me here. Kansas City, as great as they were this year, only scored 59 more points than their opponents through the whole season. They won 15 of the 16. I'm throwing out week 18.
Yeah,
If you look at the 16 games they cared about, they won 15 of them, right? And their season-long points margin is only plus 59. And here they are favored by 8.5. That feels a little rich to me. I wanted to play this game under, and I thought this game was going to open around 45 or 46, and it opened at 43.5, and it's dropped. So I don't know. This is the only game I haven't played a side or a total on. I will say this from a trend standpoint. Patrick Mahomes at home, regular season and playoffs since the start of 2023, is 13-5 to the under. Kansas City under Andy Reid as a home favorite of 7 points or more, 38-16-1 to the under. They're 10-3 to the under since 2021 as a home favorite of 7 points or more. But that's a low number. And part of me is like, are they holding Mahomes, playoff Mahomes, under 28 points, And is the defense going to pitch a shutout? So I might go over this total, especially if it drops a little more. Do you have any thoughts on the outcome of this game?
They only scored 385 points this year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a low number for this team. But I often, and I've been saying this for a couple of years, they sometimes appear bored.
Yes.
In the regular season. They've been to the postseason so many times. You mentioned Mahomes' 18 postseason games. It's like everybody else is trying to get to the postseason. Kansas City starts going, okay, we got to get through 18 weeks. We're going to be in the postseason. Let's be ready for the postseason. And I feel like they're the one team right now. I mean, I know Buffalo gets there, and the Eagles have gotten there quite a bit. But I feel like when I watch them some Sundays, they're like, I'm not saying they're going through the motions and they're not trying or anything. But when they, you can only ratchet your RPMs up, to playoff peak levels so many times. It's just impossible to do it. And I feel like this is their moment. They're at home. They're rested. Yes, they've got a formidable opponent coming in with a good quarterback and a good coach. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it doesn't even matter who goes in there. Like, they're ready to go play the best football of the season. That's how I feel like they're going to play this thing on Sunday.
Yeah, Andy Reid knows how to prepare them. We'll see if that number goes down. It was that 8.5 has moved around a little bit. We'll see where it gets closer to kickoff. Well, that leads us into Washington at Detroit. Jayden Daniels, I don't even know what to say about this young man anymore.
Well, you're a wordsmith, Jason. I've run out of adjectives. I've run out of superlatives because each week you sort of watch the same picture. The thing, before you get into your introduction to the game, the thing that has amazed me from the beginning, and I remember I called Dan Quinn up during in the offseason in June when they were having a mini camp, and it was closed to the media. And I just asked him, I said, look, I'm friends with Cliff. I don't know Jayden Daniels.
Yeah.
I'd like to just come and watch practice. Would you mind? He goes, got it all set up for you, Baldy. Come on, come see us.
Awesome.
So I go out and I watch the practice. I'm just observing. Adam is over the general manager, and I'm kind of talking about all the new acquisitions. But the thing that amazed me from that day on, he runs the whole offense at the line of scrimmage. Now, Cliff gives him the play, Cliff Kingsbury. But he basically gets everybody lined up. They're in a shotgun spread offense. He makes all the checks. He makes all the decisions. Like, he's taken in an entire offense, and he can spit it out and never blink, never, ever. Like, Baker's got the ball on the ground twice in the fourth quarter.
Yes.
Like, you just don't see those kind of errors at all from Jayden Daniels. The guy is unflappable.
He's as cool a customer as you could ever you could ever hope to imagine. And for someone who plays the game with so much electricity, like he keeps the heart rate down, like he keeps the mind sound, right? He thinks the game slow, like
doesn't
he
even
plays
do
it
like
fast.
the first down. Jason, he doesn't even do the
No.
first down thing. He scores a touchdown, throws one to McLaurin, who throws one to Dami Brown last week, and it's like it's like no big deal.
No wasted energy. Yeah,
No.
It's pretty phenomenal. Baldy, though, they're running into, I think, a different kind of buzzsaw here.
I agree.
That dome's going to be nuts, and I'm not demeaning Tampa's home field advantage, but this is going to be different. Detroit getting Sonic and Knuckles back against the Washington front right now. We got Deron Payne beat up. We got Bobby Wagner beat up. We got that Detroit offensive line with these two running backs.
Yeah.
Jahmyr Gibbs, all he did is run for over 100 yards in the 3 games without Montgomery. He's got almost 2,000 scrimmage yards and 20 touchdowns on the season. Styles make fights, as they say. And we talked in the intro, right, about bully ball and who's the more physical team. I mean, you've got that Detroit rushing game at a time, Baldy, where Washington's running backs rushing yards over the last few games, 44, 23, 81, 32, 71, 22, 57. That's Washington's rushing yards by running backs combined by game. I don't know that they can hold up.
Well, I'm a huge David Montgomery fan. I don't know anybody who isn't. I remember when he was at Iowa State with Matt Campbell and doing games up there. But it's almost a blessing that he's on the field and Jahmyr Gibbs isn't the lead back.
Right.
Because
for the defense. Yeah.
It's just harder on the defense. I mean, you still have to tackle David Montgomery, and that's a challenge. And they like that. They do love that combination. That's one of the first things Dan Campbell did was change that running back room. And he had to defend David Montgomery when he was in Chicago. But regardless, I mean, this team scored 68 touchdowns. They score minimum of 4 touchdowns a game. They're going to put up 30 to begin with. Now, you look at them, they've scored 40s and they scored 50. Like they can score they can score as well as any offense we've seen in recent history. So I don't care what Washington does. They got to score. You basically got to score 30 to win. And so that's a challenge for Washington. Now, can Jayden Daniels pull, some of these, like Dami Brown had his best game as a pro last week, and they needed that. And McLaurin's been a stud, and Zach Ertz has been good. They don't run the ball well. It's got to be Jayden. Jayden has got to probably play his best game he's ever played, including anything at LSU, in order to probably stay on the heels of what Detroit can do. I mean, if they win, this over and under isn't going to be close. I think it's going to be over 55.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be in the 60s. So, but that's the style that they probably have to play because of how good Detroit is and how good that offensive line is at protecting Goff and everything else.
Well, and I'm totally with you, Baldy. And to your point, we got a Detroit offense that averages over 33 on the season and even more than that at home. And since Washington went to Arizona and blew them out, right? That was men against the boys, and that was peak Jayden Daniels before the hip injury. If you look at Washington on the road since then, scoring production, 23, 23, 20, 18, 27, 23. It is tougher on the road. It's tougher even for Jayden Daniels on the road, and it's tougher on the road at a time when the run game's gotten more singular than multiple, right? It's Jayden Daniels. Like Robinson, maybe short yardage, Eckler, okay, a screen here or there. The design runs aren't going anywhere. And on the flip side, Washington allowed 4.7 per carry this year, Baldy. This is the thing that got me. 1.9 yards before contact allowed by Washington, 29th in the NFL. Yeah. I don't know how that plays against this Detroit O-line.
I don't either. I mean, this is the best run blocking. I'm not going to say they're the best offensive line in football. The Eagles, Buffalo, those teams that can challenge. But it's the best run blocking offensive line. Some of it is Ben Johnson and his design, and a lot of things that he does is set up certain things. But they're Their tight ends are excellent on the edges, both of them, Wright and Laporta. Nobody moves people like Penei Sewell in his business right now. Like they're just very good about how they go about their run game. It's going to be a big challenge, and then all the play action off it. And when you have Jamison Williams and you have Jahmyr Gibbs, they literally score from anywhere on the field.
Yeah,
you blink, and you gotta factor in. There's going to be a stumble bum play. There's going to be a hook and lateral. I mean, they're going to have some wrinkle. Not whether they execute it or not, who knows? But there's going to be a wrinkle or two in there that Washington hasn't seen that they might be, and maybe they don't even have to use it. But I do think that this game it's going to be, if Washington's going to win, they got to put up 30. That's where it starts. And it's been a challenge. They put up over 30 in Philadelphia a month ago. They turned it over 5 times that day. They still did it. Jayden, if they keep it close and they get to the fourth quarter, now you're right. Now you're right in Jayden Daniels, because his ability in overtime, final drive last week to make the best plays he made all day last week.
Yes.
Was in the fourth quarter in that final drive.
If they can make it a close and late game, I'm not betting against Jayden Daniels. That's for damn sure.
Right.
Keep that in mind if you're live betting this game. I took Detroit -8.5. That doesn't exist anymore. It's not coming back. I'm with you, Baldy. I would play this game over. Dan Campbell, and in the at home playoffs and regular season, is 22-14 to the over. Those Lions games at home under Dan Campbell, playoffs, regular season, average 54.4 points.
It's one thing that I think is going to be interesting to watch as the game plays on is Washington. They put the stat up last week, is 20 for 23 on 4th downs.
Yeah.
Like Dan Quinn, Cliff, they might just be saying right now,
no punts.
We're anywhere on the other side of the 50. We're 4-down territory because you put the ball in Jayden Daniels' hand.
Yep.
Like it's play after play after play where he converts it. And then Washington, Detroit, conversely, they were 22 of 33. They did it. So I think both teams feel like, okay, 4th and 2 at our 40-yard line, we're going to put the ball. We're going to possess the ball. We're going to keep it. And that blew up obviously for Detroit last year against San Francisco when they were up 17 and they made some of those decisions and it backfired. So it would be interesting to see how both teams look at 4th and short in this game.
Yeah, and that could also help get us over here if they're converting, extending those drives and wearing out those defenses on long drives. Maybe they're finishing with 7 and not 3. I love a scary Terry anytime touchdown in this game, 14 touchdowns in his last 16 games. I like Laporta to get in the end zone. There's not a lot of value on Lions touchdown scorers in this game because they think everybody's going to score. But that's when I like, and I don't know how they abandoned Jahmyr Gibbs after what he's done, Baldy. Like 80 rushing yards for Jahmyr Gibbs, 80.5. Like, I don't know how you completely abandon him, especially between the 20s from a yardage standpoint.
Well, I don't think they're going to go. I know David Montgomery's been cleared and he's going to play. I feel like Detroit doesn't need to rush him at all. If they want to get him some carries just to get him back in the flow of the game, I feel like this is going to be a Jahmyr Gibbs game. And, if you look at them, they've been up until the injury to David Montgomery, they were pretty evenly split between the carries, almost identical. Jahmyr Gibbs just runs at a much greater yard per carry. But I feel like David's a big part of this turnaround in Detroit. He's a big part. You saw him on the sidelines.
Yep.
Week 18 against Minnesota. Like he's a big pillar to this whole turnaround. And they don't want to abandon that. No. But I think they also know that Gibbs is a special player. Whether he's catching it, whether he's getting matched up on a linebacker, like this guy can scoot as well as anybody in this postseason. So I feel like he's going to get the preponderance of the carries in the game.
I'm with you. Montgomery probably still starts the game. Montgomery in goal-to-go situations, but Washington's also a bottom 8 defense in the NFL. Missed tackles on run plays, and few people make you miss like Jahmyr Gibbs. Look, you and I are big fans of Sean McVay's work. We have been long before he was even an NFL head coach. What he's done to rally those men and their families at a time when Southern California is dealing with issues way more difficult and impactful than having to play a game in Arizona.
They're right in the heart of it, Jason. They're right in Thousand Oaks. They're right
unbelievable.
There.
It's unbelievable.
You can't even shelter yourself from it.
No.
like I know there's people in the organization that live right in the heart, and I'm sure certain players or like they're immediately affected by it every day.
Yeah, it is absolutely devastating and horrific what's happening out there. And if you can contribute a little bit to the Red Cross or anything going on out there, certainly every little bit helps. Football does go on. What they did, I thought, was special in Arizona. Now it gets even tougher. You're on cross country. You're playing outdoors
They
as
got
a
the
zone
short
team.
stick, Jason.
Yeah,
I
they
mean, you
got
had to
the
get on a plane Monday night, fly back to LA, get
yeah.
back.
You lose a home game, have to travel, and then travel again.
Yeah, and then they got to come across the country. Now they play probably their best defensive game of the year against Minnesota. I mean, it wasn't just Sam Darnold. I mean, they shut everything down. The run game, they shut Justin Jefferson down. I mean, they shut everything down. It was a great the 9 sacks, 12 quarterback hits. Now they played, November 24th against the Eagles out there in LA, and it was awful. I mean, Saquon had 302 yards of offense. They did whatever they wanted to do. Now, Sean McVay he's just too good of a coach to let anything like that happen again. Whether they change defensive fronts, personnel, how they attack offensively, he's not going to let the Eagles put up 550 yards of offense. I'm sure of all that. But the Eagles are better in the trenches than the Rams. They're just better. Now, Stafford made unbelievable throws to start that game last week against great coverage, and it was just one good throw after another. A lot of play action, 11 of the 28 pass attempts under center, play action. That's their game. That's what they do. The only question I have, honestly, in this game, because I believe the Eagles should be favored and will win this game.
Yeah.
But, we all watched A.J. Brown reading his book on the sideline last week. Now, you could take whatever you want because everybody has an opinion about it. But you don't do that if you're engaged in the offense. If you're a part of it, if you're catching passes, you're not doing that. So it was a signal, like, get me involved, and that was his thing. The passing game, look, Jalen has thrown 16 touchdowns and 1 interception since week 4 when they lost to Tampa in his 11 starts, and he's 11-0. It's working.
Yeah,
but I don't know if you can just play this on 3rd and 12, just hand it off. If 3rd and 8, you're just going to run for it. Like, I don't think you can play that style against the Rams. Like, you got to be better in the passing game to beat this team, I believe.
How defensively do the Rams adjust, though? Like, it's not like you're bringing a 365-pounder off the street, right? And you're signing them and throwing them in your base defense. Like, I certainly they don't have to hemorrhage yards like 7.1 per play allowed in that first game.
Yeah.
And you've got to, find a way to win early downs a little differently. But
they gave up, the first play of the third quarter was a 70-yard touchdown by Saquon. I mean, they were out of position on that. Now the Eagles blocked it up perfectly. But I don't know what Matt Haight was doing in the middle of the defense there. Like, they just didn't look like that's a good defensive play against Saquon. So maybe they're in a reduced front and they cover up the nose of the center. I mean, there's things you can do. You can run blitz a little bit more. You can play a better gap look against the Eagles, but Eagles are going to run their 5 run plays, and they're going to run their powers and their traps inside, and they're going to get their perimeter runs. So they got to get off blocks a lot better than they did in that game. I mean, that's the first thing. If I was sitting there in a team meeting today and I was Coach Shula, I'm like, we got to get off a block here. You can't let A.J. Brown just, block Cam Curl in this play like this. So, I mean, there's certain things like that where you got to have real firm reminders. But the Eagles have generally started slow this year. The passing game does not look dynamic. It runs through Saquon.
Yeah.
So the longer they can keep it close, like Green Bay kept it close last week, they just kept turning it over, But credit Darius Slay and Quinion. They played great in the secondary, but Green Bay kept the score close. It was close in the third quarter. They just couldn't make a play offensively.
Can the Rams run the ball on the Eagles?
Kyron is a quality back. They lost to Kobe Dean last week. He's out.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see, who plays next to Zach Bond. But, the Eagles are just a great tackling team. Like, they don't miss that. In all these rookies, Cooper DeJean, Quinn Young, they're all good tacklers. Reed Blankenship. And so that's the thing is you might get a split, but you're not going to take a 6-yard gain and make it. Josh Jacobs got one last week. They missed a couple. But I don't believe that they're going to have a steady diet of missed tackles.
Yeah, I just wonder how Sean handles this because I think he knows he needs volume in the run game to keep the clock moving, to let his defense catch its breath because it's going to be physically tough against that Eagles O-line and against this running back. I wonder if they throw to running backs more than we've seen lately. Like, not having, Corum, does that matter at all?
Not really. I mean, Kyron gets at one point after week 16, he led the league in total touches.
Yeah.
He's used to a volume. So, you can spell him with what they have, but, it's going to be basically Kyron. He's an excellent protector. He's excellent in receiving and screen game. This looks to me like it's got to be a big game for Nakua. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Higbee was re-injured last week, Jason, after he got off to a fast start. But I feel like the timing that Stafford has with Cooper and with Nakua, Higbee, if he's healthy, like that has got to win the day. The short passes, the long runs, those are like the pinpoint passing that Stafford's capable of doing. Like they got to stay on the field with that, I believe.
The forecast looks like it could be a little bit wet, not ideal. I will say this. I was in the stands last December and it was cold and it was rainy and the Baltimore Ravens had a defense that would go on to make history, first in NFL history to lead the league in sacks, points allowed, and takeaways. And Matthew Stafford and those guys came in here.
Yep.
And they moved the ball. And with Mike McDonald running the defense.
Yes.
And they came in on a 1 p.m. start. 1 p.m. start, so 10 a.m. for them on a short week. And they moved the ball at will. Yeah. So I know there's some people who are going to say, oh, Stafford, dome quarterback, it's going to be a little bit wet. I don't know. I mean, Matt Stafford in the postseason as an LA Ram has a quarterback rating of 103.
Yeah.
Like,
well, he
steps it up.
He played his majority of the career in Detroit, so he was in Green Bay.
Right.
He was in Chicago. I mean, I don't think that he's a big, strong, big-handed guy. Like you don't see the ball slipping out of his hands. Like I think he's built for this postseason. I think. Look, they have certainly. They all had the LAPD hats on, the shirts on. Like they're trying to give those people that have lost everything some level of 3 hours of hope, whatever that does to people that are just so salvaged like this. I feel like they're doing it for them. They've said so. I think they'll be inspired by all of that. I think you'll get the best of what the Rams are at this point. And look, they played great down the stretch. I mean, this is a second half team they were last year when they went to Baltimore, when they won a playoff game. Like, this is a good second half team.
I want to take the Rams here, but I think you could eventually get 7 points. So I'm waiting. I want the 7. Sean McVay in December and January, all-time Baldy, 36-17-1 against the spread. 13-2 against the spread his last 15 December and January games. The first thing I jumped is the under. And it hasn't moved much, and I would still go under here. We think McVay can muddy this game up. We think the Eagles are very conservative offensively right now, and Sirianni doesn't want to bleep it up. So just run the damn ball. That keeps the clock moving. The Eagles' last 15 home playoff games, Baldy, 12-2-1 to the under. Those games closed at 43 points on average, and they produced 36 points on average. 7 points below the close on average over a 15-game sample size. That stands out to me. Jalen Hurts in his playoff career, 5-1 to the under.
Well, this is his 7th playoff game now. He's been in the playoffs every year. I mean, he's a playoff winning quarterback. He's 3-3 in the postseason. Obviously, it ended poorly last year. Got himself a win here last week. The Philadelphia fans are already lining up in the parking lot, Jason. You know how they are.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to have all their support. I don't know if they even let a Ram fan in the building. So they're going to get every single home field advantage you can get. You have to account for Jaylen as a runner. He's healthy right now. So, like the Rams have their hands full. And they got the short stick. It's all going the Eagles' way. They just have to go take care of business. And I think in the trenches, they're better. And I think you're going to see that they're better.
Baldy, the best game of the weekend, at least we think on paper, is another rematch game. And when these teams played, it was a lot like that Eagles-Rams game. One team held the ball the whole time and ran all over the other in the multitude.
Starting on the first play of the game, Jason.
Starting on the first play of the game. Baldy, in that 35-10 Baltimore Ravens win, the Ravens attempted a total of 4 passes to Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, and Zay Flowers combined. They produced 33 receiving yards combined, and the Baltimore Ravens still won 35-10 because Justice Hill and Derrick Henry combined for 36 touches and 305 scrimmage yards and 3 touchdowns. They had 90 yards receiving on 9 targets with 2 touchdowns. Derrick Henry ran for 200 yards. Baldy, when Pat Ricard was on the field in that football game, the Ravens ran 23 times for over 200 yards, 9 yards a carry, and a touchdown. Oh, and now they run 6 offensive linemen more than anybody in the league, even more than the Buffalo Bills, who in the regular season did it more than any team in the league. I know Milano didn't play in that game. I know Bernard didn't play in that game. I know the slot guy didn't play in that game. But Baldy, Josh Allen's 20 pounds heavier than Matt Milano. I just don't know that that's the answer for 6 offensive linemen, a 265-pound blocking tight end, a 300-pound fullback, and a 250-pound running back who's going to Canton first ballot. Oh, yeah, and you got to defend Lamar, too.
Well, it's interesting, Jason, to me, because I'm watching the game live, Pittsburgh and Baltimore last week. And then I go back and I study it the next day. And the Steelers have played the Ravens 3 times in 8 weeks, and they had no answer.
They got worse. They got progressively worse against it.
So, and Buffalo was faced with the same situation. And so I was talking to Warren Sapp this week about because I was like, okay, back in the day when he was in Tampa, they had to contend with Mike Vick. So Mike Vick isn't Derrick Henry, but Mike Vick was the guy in that era. And his thing was, you can't let these either Lamar or Derrick Henry get vertical. Once they get vertical, like they're just going to do damage. So what he means is whoever pulls it, whoever keeps the ball, you got to flatten them. Now that's where Matt Milano's speed can come in. Mm-hmm. If you can flatten Lamar or Derrick Henry where they can't start going down the alley like they did against Pittsburgh, and he goes 44 yards up the middle, and both safeties and the linebacker are waiting for Lamar on the outside. Like you can't let that happen. So Buffalo struggled with it, and they're not built against a great running team to begin with, Jason. Like
they don't have the personnel. They want to beat Baldy. To me, they're built to beat Miami in the regular season and Kansas City in the playoffs. They're not built to beat Baltimore, especially when it's 5 degrees and windy.
It's going to be a big challenge. It's interesting. I was texting back and forth on the other side in what Josh Allen could do. And you have watched this Ravens defense evolve during the season. They were awful the first half of the season, and they have increasingly gotten better. And so Chuck Smith's a pass rush specialist coach, and they finished the season second in sacks this year, first last year. But you look at the development of Owe right now. You look at the continued development of Matabike. You look at Van Noy right now having the 2 best years of his career. You look at what Travis Jones has become, and you go, they can rush 4 now. It used to be with Wink and Mike McDonald. They had really
getting Pierce back. Getting Pierce back was huge too.
And getting Pierce back, okay. So, but they can get home with 4 right now. And so then what Chuck is basically saying, though, in addition to that, is when you play these style of quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Lamar, these guys that Jalen Hurts, these guys that can run on you, and you have to account for them. It has changed the way that you actually rush the passer now. He calls it cage rushing, where you really have – it's not about just winning your pass rush as quickly as you can. You have to account for these guys as runners And so it's changed the way that you pass rush. And I'm interested to go back and watch week 4 and just what Josh Allen did against their pass rush. Because obviously you got to account for Josh every short yardage situation, every third down. Like he's a threat to take it down and just basically ruin you. So it's just something to watch and look for in this game, how probably frequently the Ravens just rush with 4 and the style of rush that they have.
The third quarter for the Baltimore Ravens defense, as good as it's been since week 11, was an abject failure against a Pittsburgh team that is quite limited. Pittsburgh had almost 200 yards in that third quarter. They repeatedly converted 3rd and 6 or longer, and they did it throwing the football, often down the sidelines. Brandon Stevens is terrible right now, but this went beyond Brandon Stevens if you really kind of looked at it. There is an underbelly of 6 weeks of failure from this Ravens defense where Marlon Humphrey came out and said, we cannot be the little brother anymore. You look at who they faced since then, it ain't anything close to Josh Allen in this offense. Can the Bills exploit, like, our Darius Washington's played great. He's never seen this before. He's never played on the road in the playoffs, right? He and Kyle Hamilton have never gone do or die season on the line against a quarterback like this where it's 70,000 people going nuts and you can't hear yourself think. Like, are they still a little vulnerable back there?
Yeah, they're vulnerable. They are. The Buffalo Bills' strength is their offensive line. You know, for the 18th week, basically in a row, week 18, they took the week off.
Threw that out.
But they're going to start the same 5 guys, you know, Deion Dawkins and Edwards and McGovern and Cyborg and Spencer Brown. And Alec Anderson is their 6th lineman. Like, they're well coached by Aaron Cromer, very well coached. It's a strength. Whether running it last week for over 200 yards, whatever it is, extending plays, like the 4th and 2 touchdown to Ty Johnson. It's classic, you know, Josh Allen. Like, will Baltimore be any better at defending that 4th and 2 play than what we saw last week? Probably not. They like their backs on your linebackers, and I would expect them to go after the Raven linebackers.
They should,
you know, in pass coverage and put Roquan and put those guys there in coverage against Ty and against James Cook. They're excellent receivers.
Is there any part of you that wonders if Trenton Simpson sees the field more in this game because of the athleticism, because he could be the guy to try to spy Josh Allen a little bit when they think it leans to that? Because I don't think it's Malik or Chris Board. Like that, no, that ain't the matchup.
Yeah. You know, they made the switch. You know, Trenton was in there for a long time. They've made the switch now. He's got the speed. I don't know. You know, the spy only works if that guy is actually faster than the guy who's running the ball. And Josh Allen looks like he's just like Lamar is. They look like they're the 2 fastest players on the field when they have the ball in their hands. You never see them caught from behind. So I've seen Kansas City spy Josh Allen. It really doesn't work. But you got to be if you play man coverage and try to blitz, good luck. All right, because he recognizes that as quickly as anybody. And then with guys with their backs turned running down the field, he can get big chunks at a time. So it's a conundrum for both these defenses against these quarterbacks.
These teams are combined 24-12 to the over. Baltimore Ravens under John Harbaugh, 7-3-1 against the spread on the road in the playoffs. I think we forget John Harbaugh, what he's done as a coach on the road in the playoffs. How does this one end, Baldy? How does this one get decided?
I feel like the Ravens are a tougher matchup for this Bills team. I think the Bills probably could go to Kansas City and win. Mm-hmm. I think they could beat Houston. I think they could beat a lot of teams. I think this is a tough matchup. And, you know, I don't know if snowballs are going to be flying up there on Sunday in Orchard Park or, you know, what it's going to look like. But I don't think it's going to make a difference. Like, I think these guys are on a mission. The difference, they shut Kansas City out in the second half last year in that championship game. They just screwed up the first half.
Yeah.
Like, they've got Derrick Henry now. They're not going to get away from the run game, no matter what Buffalo does. They could put 11 guys up on the line of scrimmage. They're not going to get away from the run in this game. And I believe that this is the difference. Derrick Henry is the difference in this whole team this year. And he's proved it here, especially down the stretch.
And I think he'll help that defense out a lot by helping the Ravens keep the ball for 36, 37 minutes and keep Josh Allen off the field. Well, there you go. We're thinking Baltimore, Kansas City. We're thinking Detroit, Philadelphia. That would be a hell of a championship game weekend. We can't wait to watch the division round. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Carl will be back with us next week. In the meantime, please listen, subscribe, Spotify, Odyssey app, wherever you get your stuff. You can check us out on YouTube. Replay the episodes. They get better with time. And we'll be back next week on the In the Huddle podcast.